Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Open Minds on Air, the official podcast of the Open Minds Foundation. My name is Pearse Redmond. I am your co-host, and you can find more about the Open Minds Foundation by going to openmindsfoundation.org. I am joined on the line once again by our good friend Yuval Laor, who is the research coordinator here at Open Minds. We won't have John with us for this episode. He was a little busy, but Yuval and I had some time, so we figured we would record something. And very quickly, I just wanted to say we've had a tremendous response to our last episode, episode 5, where we talked about Jim Jones and the People's Temple. We dissected an article by Rebecca Moore entitled "The Brainwashing Myth," and we had a lot of really interesting response to that episode. We even had Rebecca Moore commenting on the Open Minds website, and I believe Yuval, you and John are going to be doing something responding to her response, because I think she wasn't really. She claimed that we were very, nitpicky, and we were, I forget the exact word, cheap shots and snide comments, but, her response was very snide. There's also, it was just posted up on, the Open Minds, website on an interview that, advisory board member Steve Hassan did with, Jonestown survivor, Vernon Gosney. Who was he was actually shot alongside Congressman Leo Ryan on the White Night. And that was sort of like a response, again, to our recent Open Minds on Air episode. So I encourage people to check that out. I'm just so happy that, we've had a variety of different opinions on this. And not all kind of, negative and stuff, but I think critical opinions, and it's great to have this discussion happening. So lots to check out on, openmindsfoundation.org. But Yuval, we have a very interesting episode, today. We're going to be, talking about conspiracy theories. We'll be talking about some recent ones and some old ones, and I think kind of talking about the power that conspiracy theories can have on someone, how undue influence can sort of factor into this, the power that conspiracy can have on one's mind, why cults and authoritarian groups often use conspiracy theory. And I guess we'll just kind of preface this episode again, by saying that we're talking about them in a broad sense. This isn't meant to be a pro or anti conspiracy theory episode. I think, the listeners are probably aware that I do discuss conspiracy theories on my regular radio show. Certainly I think there is, as we'll talk about a bit later in the episode, there are certainly conspiracy theories that are true. I think that the term like cult or hypnosis or brainwashing or many of the things we've discussed is a very loaded term, and we should differentiate between really kind of like crazy out there, maybe even destructive conspiracy theories, and the sort of conspiracy theories that again are talked about daily in the court, in the court system. There are lots of conspiracies that are totally legitimate. So it's a very loaded term. I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. So we're not, attacking or disproving or trying to prove certain ones.
And in addition to conspiracy theories, there's also conspiracy theorists.
Yes.
So there are people who are, and that's a different kind of loaded kind of a term. But
yeah, absolutely. And I think it very much like cult, it can be, you can use that label in a very negative way to attack people, and that's not what we're really trying to do here. And I think we're going to be talking about some very real conspiracy theories later on in the show.
Sure.
And we're going to be discussing a recent conspiracy theory, which has sort of in a lot of ways it has transcended everything. It is being spoken about in the mainstream media, at the water cooler. It's across all age groups, gender, whatever, have you. It's sort of everywhere. This is the QAnon theory, which people might have already heard about. I assume many people have heard this at least mentioned because it's been on, all of the big 3-letter news agencies. It's in all the major newspapers. It's obviously, if you follow conspiracy media, like myself, it's been around for many, many months. But we do want to preface again that we're using the QAnon thing as a sort of a launching pad for a wider discussion. We're not here to solve the mystery of, what QAnon is or who QAnon is, although I think we'll offer up some possibilities. And we're definitely not here to make political judgments or express political opinions about QAnon or about the people that believe or disbelieve in QAnon. But it is a very fascinating story because it has sort of taken on a life of its own, and I think it's a wonderful way to start a conversation about this. So, just to give a little bit of history, QAnon is this supposed insider within the government. There's no specifics about where this person is alleged to have worked or works. They are supposedly have Q-level clearance, which is actually a form of security clearance that is from the Department of Energy. So you can make of that what you will. And this insider began posting anonymously to 4chan, which is a very popular message board, or I guess it's more like an image board, online as this government insider who was talking about all of the, behind the scenes, deep state machinations, that are going on and, how certain people were going to help, clean out all of the evil, satanic pedophiles and, the horrible people that are, going to ruin the government. And this began to spread, quite quickly. And, then it moved to Reddit, it moved to YouTube, we began seeing people, that were making considerable amounts of money off of deciphering these very cryptic messages that QAnon would post, periodically on 4chan, also on 8chan as well, which is another popular image, message board. And
they're both anonymous.
Yes, they're all anonymous. You cannot, it's not like, after a post, it's, this was from Yuval Laor, and, here's his profile. It is all anonymous, which, raises a lot of questions about who this is and if we should really trust it. But as I said, this, has, grown in popularity. There are now people, with, QAnon t-shirts, with, signs at political events. And as I said, it's sort of become like a cottage industry. Now, if people are really kind of fascinating and diving into some of the specifics of this, they can check out some of my shows on my radio show, Porkins Policy Radio. You can go to porkinspolicyreview.com. That's my website. And you can find, I've done lots of things if people are interested in getting into the minutia of, some of these, theories. But it's interesting because it went from a very niche community, on 4chan to, as I said, being discussed on virtually every mainstream media outlet. Of course, to, denounce Q and to denounce its followers, to say that there's nothing to this. But essentially, what this individual or individuals has been saying is that, there is a secret cabal, that is, against the government, and that there are insiders that are fighting against this. And much of this is left in extremely cryptic messages. The messages are never outright saying that. And then it's the job of the research community to decipher that.
But it includes the John F. Kennedy Jr. faked his death and things like that, right?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, well, that is a prevailing theory that John F. Kennedy Jr. is actually QAnon. He faked his death to become Q, I guess. I'm not sure,
Got a job at the Ministry of Energy. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, and again, that's just one small strand. There are many different theories as to who it is and who's really behind it.
Trump and Robert Mueller are supposed to be working together, right?
That is another theory, that they're actually working together. They're not opposed to each other. Again, and it's sort of constantly evolving. You know, and then you'll get posts that, oh no, that's not true. This is the real, this is the true reality behind it. As I said, it's very fluid sort of a story, ever evolving. But there are a lot of aspects of the QAnon story that I think are great as a sort of a jumping off point or a launching point for a wider discussion. And there's also a lot of stuff specifically about the QAnon thing that makes it look very kind of, again, I'm going to use a loaded term, cult-like, or perhaps more like a secret society. And that again is also very interesting, seeing how conspiracy theory interacts with our society, how it affects people. And, here are a few things, Yuval, and then I'll throw them to you if you want to add or pick apart. But, we've got, like a secret society, it's very cryptic in nature. If you read the posts, to a layman, they won't make any sense. But apparently, the initiated believers can understand what these posts are all about. There is the promise that truth, or more importantly, that secret knowledge will be revealed, which is again very much like a secret society. Adherents to this theory speak their own esoteric language. Again, they speak very cryptically. They use strange phrases that to an outsider, to the exoteric society, they would not be able to understand. There is this sense that if you are a part of this, that you are part of the initiated, you are part of this inner circle that understands the secret wisdom and truth of the world. There is also a great urgency. There's a constant, tomorrow this huge event is going to happen. And the event is never specifically stated. But there is going to be something. It's right around the corner. The storm is brewing. There's, something on the horizon. This is the sort of thing. And then, of course, like a lot of, cults or secret societies, the predictions don't actually come true, but that in a weird way almost reinforces the believers that something is going to happen later. And of course, as someone that studies conspiracy theory and that whole culture, it also just gets the endorphins going. You get that excitement. Much in the same way when you read like a history book or something, something you didn't know, and you learn a new bit of information, you get excited. You're, oh my God, I didn't know this. And I want to go tell people that, oh, did you know that in 1845 this thing happened? And all your friends just love it when you do that. But those are sort of a lot of the aspects about this particular conspiracy theory that I think are applicable to many conspiracy theories. But this one specifically has created this very ardent, vocal community. And I don't know, I wanted to get your take on this, Yuval. I mean, again, on this notion of it being almost like a secret society. And if you want to pick apart any of those little aspects that I just threw out to you.
Sure. Yeah. And I have more to add to those. But, there is, I think, with, conspiracy theories, there is a very seductive feeling of knowing. So the feelings of knowing, which are certainty, familiarity, conviction, realness, correctness, truthiness, and they are very rewarding. So it's people enjoy feeling that they know things, especially if it's secret knowledge that they have and other people don't. It's it is something that people can enjoy in itself. Which is also the joy that you get from learning anything, So just it's sort of a generalized enjoying of knowledge and learning. But in this case, it is a very specific knowledge. I think that there's a lot of things that are going on. If we look at the psychology of the believers, which is different than the structure of the conspiracy theory or its place in history and things like that, there are certain people who which society would label conspiracy theorists, which will believe every conspiracy theory, even when they contradict each other. And I think that is an image that is used to attack anybody that believes any conspiracy theory. So when I suspected that there might not be weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, some people would think of me as a conspiracy theorist. It turns out that there weren't. But there are people who would think that if I believe that, then I believe that Elvis is alive and that, well,
you're lumped into that group.
Yeah, exactly.
You believe that Elvis is alive, that, aliens killed JFK.
The moon landing was, also
right.
All sorts of things. But there are more general aspects. For example, we'll get to rationalization, how people rationalize things, because that's an important aspect. But I think that a lot of people talk about that, so we'll get to it. But what people don't talk about as much is what I call the argument from strangeness, which is something is strange, is the claim, and then the conclusion is that something which is unrelated has been proven. So if you look, for example, in conspiracy theories, people will say if it wasn't for the Illuminati controlling the world through chemtrails, how would you explain the pyramid on the dollar, right? So the pyramid on the dollar is strange, therefore, Illuminati chemtrails. But you see that there's a more general way, and it's the way people react to what they consider to be miracles, or inexplicable events. So this can be, for example, someone would say, if it wasn't for Islam being true, how would you explain that I thought of someone and then they just called me on the phone? Right? Or if it wasn't for Christianity being true. Or another example of this can be seen in the argument from design. So the argument from design, which is an argument for the existence of God, claims that if you walk on the beach and you find a watch on the beach, then you know that there's someone who made the watch. So if you see a cat, therefore there's someone who made the cat, and therefore the cat is strange. Therefore, God wants us to not, eat meat on Fridays.
Right.
So there is this, something is sufficiently strange, and that gets people into a mindset that, oh my God, and now I see the things as they really are. And that could be used psychologically as a proof of things that are completely unrelated. Someone, Uri Geller, who is a charlatan who claims to have a certain, that he can bend spoons, therefore that is sufficiently strange, therefore he might know where the missing plane, the Malaysia airline plane is, or maybe he would know where to drill for oil, which are both things that he was asked his opinion on. He claims that he does have superpowers. So this kind of argument from strangeness, I think, is many times used. So in the QAnon context, this would be, if it wasn't for QAnon being true, how would you explain Trump acting as if he's so stupid? or how would you explain the media deceiving people, which there's many examples. The media is very problematic, but
or multiple seemingly unrelated news stories that come out, and they because Q said this story is absolutely true, and it relates back to what QAnon said.
Yeah, or Trump said the tippy toe, right? He said
yes, there is a strange reference that he made. He said tippy top, and this was someone had asked QAnon to say this to see if he could say it. Therefore, the connection is totally apparent.
Yeah. So the argument from strangeness here would be that someone said that Trump would say tippy toe, then he said tippy toe, therefore John F. Kennedy Jr. faked his death, right?
Right.
So it's something that is not related to, but the argument from strangeness, when the subject involved includes the emotion of awe, which can blind people, can create blind spots in people, they would actually see. It doesn't mean that the fact that the argument doesn't work, it doesn't mean that, and people rely on that argument, it doesn't mean that those people are, that they are, that they are gullible. This is a type of psychological manipulation that all of us go through. So, and it's very, very common in, for example, religious arguments. A miracle proves things that are not related to the miracle in various traditions. But we live in a society where there are lots and lots of strange things, right? The media ignores things that they shouldn't ignore. They push things that they shouldn't put. You can see that there is propaganda, and that can be used as a proof of things which are outlandish.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that just sort of, again, that also feeds into, the sense that people have that they're part of this, secret group that knows the true reality of the world. And this, of course, just reinforces everything that they believe in. And it makes them more ardent. It makes them more, unwilling to, hear different opinions. And I think, as you said, earlier, it also can force people into a situation where they will believe virtually anything, even when it contradicts, some of their own core beliefs or core theories. They will easily change their mind. I mean, and that is definitely an example of someone or a group having extremely, undue influence on you. When you can be, you can be told to believe something that yesterday you were told was completely false.
Yes.
That's a tremendous amount of power and control.
So within the conspiracy theories, many times there is a self-sealing element. So, and that means that within the theory, there is the narrative as to why someone would tell you that it's wrong. So if you believe that, aliens killed JFK, that might also include within that theory is that those aliens brainwashed people to not believe that. And so the reason why someone would, there's built-in reasons why someone will attack a certain conspiracy theory. Because, I know why you're not believing that. It's because the aliens got to you as well, or whatever kind of self-sealing narrative is used to make not only the claim, but the claim that anything opposing the claim is either the enemy or is either deceived or something like that.
Oh, and to briefly just jump back to the QAnon theory, of course, anyone that disagrees, and it's not even necessarily, you're disagreeing that I don't believe any of what you're saying. But if you disagree with the interpretation that someone is putting out, you are instantly labeled, you are an enemy. You are a disinfo agent. You're working for the government. You're working for, it doesn't matter. There's a long laundry list of people.
And nowadays that there is it's very, very popular to demonize the media. And I do believe that there is a good reasons to demonize the media, but there's also bad reasons. that where Trump calls them the enemy of the people, I think that really helps a theory like QAnon legitimize their self-sealing narrative that anybody who doubts QAnon, it's the evil media that is in with the pedophiles and such.
Yes, exactly. Which is sort of at the core of their whole belief system. And, it's very interesting, that is again such a hot button issue. That is such a controversial, horrific topic that, it's also very easy to, when you start throwing that term around, you can really kind of shut down the conversation. And I think you also scare people into not, wanting to, discuss it in a logical way or in an adult way. So that's also, I think, another aspect to, that can be used by conspiracy theories and conspiracy theorists the world over. I mean, let's broaden it out a bit, because I think the QAnon thing it's worth looking into because it's, actually first, I do want to just throw out, just a few possibilities, for what this is, because again, it is this, and this is what is kind of troubling about this particular theory, and I think it can be, can kind of go towards, again, broadening out the picture, of some of the dangers of conspiracy theory, is that this is totally anonymous. Who knows who this person is or persons? There's no specific way of actually telling if it's, one person, if it's, 20 people, if it's, an alien, if it's
if they believe it themselves.
Yeah. If it's some sort of AI, creation.
If it's the CIA, if it's some foreign countries, intelligence agency, if it's a leftist, if it's a right-wing person, a true believer, if it's a prank.
Well, exactly. There's all of these possibilities. And this is something that is particularly interesting, that again is applicable to a lot of people that kind of fall into this way of thinking and I've seen this, being repeated over and over again. People say, oh, well, yeah, of course, it could be all those things, but I don't really care. It doesn't really matter, because ultimately, whatever the information is, it's all true. Now, they are saying this without any real confirmation. There is no, every time, a prediction is put out there, it never happens. And then the goalposts get moved back a little bit. And everyone,
well, how do you know it didn't happen?
Well, exactly. Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing. And that kind of reminded me very much of the, your typical sort of, apocalyptic, charlatan, traveling preacher, who is, the end of the world is going to be, August 25th, 2018. This is it. Get ready, buy, all of your food supplies or whatever for the end of the world. And then when it doesn't happen, people are, still kind of believe that, it's going to happen next week.
Yeah. So this ties to, a theory of cognitive dissonance, and this is there's a classic book by Leon Festinger and I think someone else, called "When Prophecy Fails," and they were observing a religious group that was believing that the world is going to end at a certain date. And the finding was that when the prophecy failed, when the world didn't end, some people did leave and became non-believers, but the ones who stayed believed even more because they needed to rationalize what happened, right? And as they say, man is not a rational animal, man is a rationalizing animal. That's, I think that's Robert Heinlein. But the rationalization is and cognitive dissonance theory, which was attributed to Leon Festinger. The claim is that people do not they feel dissonance, which is a negative emotional experience, when there is a conflict between what they believe, how they act, or how they feel. So they would use rationalization to mend any differences. So if someone, for example, is a smoker of cigarettes and they are told that it's really unhealthy, then now they can, and they believe that it's unhealthy. Now there is a dissonance, right? Because their actions and their beliefs don't match. So they can relieve the dissonance in various ways. So one way is to say, yeah, but I really, really, really enjoy cigarettes. Another thing is to say that, well, driving is so dangerous as well, and I'm driving, right? So to minimize the danger of tobacco by comparing it to other dangers. So there's various ways. But if you, for example, are a true believer that let's say Trump is really smart and really good and really knows what he's doing, and you can use, and then you see reality where things don't look like that, then you can rationalize that by saying, oh, it's actually all part of a narrative that he's pretending to act like this so to entrap the pedophiles or, whatever it is. But it allows you to keep to avoid the dissonance by keeping your belief and your what you see and what you how you feel about things all without dissonance between them.
Oh, and again, there's always this mental gymnastics, this crazy rationalization that goes on amongst many followers. So, this is not specific to QAnon, but many conspiracy theorists and conspiracy theories.
And patriots and all sorts of.
Absolutely. And left-wing, guerrillas, fighting in the jungle. I mean, there's a lot of, this is, again, I think that many of the aspects, that we're talking about, these are not even necessarily specific to conspiracy theory, but just to any kind of authoritarian, like thought control or belief system. When you have such a powerful belief system, that again, you will rationalize everything. I mean, I know the world didn't end, but that only reinforces my thought that next week the world is definitely going to end,
Or it didn't end because our prayers were answered or whatever.
Exactly.
And also when people act on something, for example, there's a saying, how do I know what I think if I don't hear what I say? And when people who might believe or not believe, they're curious about it, but then they argue for a conspiracy theory, then they'll believe it. So they might not have been believers before they voiced it, but now that they heard themselves say it, they've become committed to it, and they think they believed it very strongly all along. So that's one of the things that can intensify. When people argue against a conspiracy theory with someone, you think that someone will now maybe believe it less, but in fact, because they argued for it, they now believe it more. So there's people think that they are helping someone by arguing with them, but they actually make them even stronger believers. Another thing that happens is group polarization. So when you have a group of people that already believe in a certain direction, when you put them together, they will believe even more. And you see this in judges. When there's 3 liberal or 3 conservative judges all together deliberating, they will their verdict will be more liberal or more conservative than when you have mixed judges that are liberal and conservative. And when I say that the study was those are judges appointed by a Democrat or a Republican. It's not it's not looking into the heart of those judges. But so group polarization is also something that plays a big role. That you have this echo chamber. You find other people that validate, give you social proof. There's camaraderie between people who believe in a certain a conspiracy theory. It's a it brings people together. Conspiracy
Yeah,
theory.
absolutely. No, I mean, I think that's, very much the allure. I mean, if we wanted to go to the full stereotype of the, tinfoil hat, theorist in his mother's basement or, with not a lot of friends. I mean, again, you have this instant community, at especially with the advent of the internet. You have this, everyone, it's said, oh yeah, you believe in the same thing that I do. Cool. Well, we must have other things in common.
And it's secret, and there's an intimacy, and there's a camaraderie that you're both are against the mainstream, so it can be a very, very enticing and very, very strong. And after you have relationships that are based on this conspiracy theory, not believing in it means that you have to leave that social group, which is not something that people want to do.
Oh, that's sort of why a lot of people end up staying in abusive relationships or cults or gangs. It's the fear of rejection, and also the fear that if I leave this group, I have no friends. I have no way of making money for myself, because I've basically worked for the group, these, past 20 years or so. How do I start my life? And I think that certainly happens to people that fall, deep and down the to use a conspiracy theory term, the rabbit hole of believing these things, is that to leave this group means that I'm leaving behind my friends. And so many people will build up their entire worldview is around these theories. Because I've met lots of people, through doing radio and stuff that, it's like, if so-and-so order, if gets their sandwich order wrong, oh, well, this is, the CIA is messing with me. Let's be, if the Skype call drops, oh, well, the NSA must have not liked that we said such and such a thing. I've had lots of conversations with people like that.
And the camaraderie that sort of the subgroups have, that is also not just that is not just a part of conspiracy theory. Well, of course, Michel Foucault writes about how in Victorian England or the Victorian era, the late 19th century, when people suddenly would not talk about sexuality and sex. But the people who did still talk about sex, they're avant-garde, they're cool, they're rebels, they're dangerous, but they're just doing something that everybody did, 100 years before. It was completely normal and commonplace. But because it went underground, now there is this aura and there's this, it's more fun to be within that, dangerous avant-garde subgroup, which is just created because of the taboo.
Well, there's always that allure to be the contrarian, to be the iconoclast, someone that goes against the grain.
I think that another aspect, and this might be just a certain subset of certain believers, but there are people who they would now say that they are believers in Q or QAnon, and they would wear a Q shirt, and and people might do that for various reasons, but one of the reasons might be that is the thing that will piss their parents the most, or their teachers.
Yes, so, definitely.
It's like a teenager that would draw a swastika because that is what would piss his parents the most, or that in the 90s there were Satan worshiping teenagers, and it wasn't that they were worshiping Satan, but they knew that is what will piss their teachers or their parents more than anything else. So I think that sometimes is also plays a role in this discussion.
Oh, sure. That's like, you see the super lefty parents, and their son becomes a, young Republican or something like that, or vice versa. The ultra conservative parents, have a hippie son that, goes and follows, fish around all day, goes to Burning Man. Of course. I mean, I think that's sort of central to, much of our growing up experiences is to piss off your parents. Which is the reason, it's a reason that, people join, cults as well. Now another aspect that I wanted to kind of, just briefly touch on, is this notion, because I think this is very applicable to high control groups, to cults, is this notion too that we are going to save the world. And that is a big thing that is wrapped up in a lot of conspiracy theory. And I think that's a really powerful, feeling. And I just wanted you to talk a little bit about that, Yuval, is this idea that we're going to save the world, that we are going to expose all of the sinners or, criminals, all the apostates, and this will make everything better.
There will be one day where we will be remembered as the ones that figured it out. We were the ones that, maybe not in our lifetime, but one day in the future, monuments will celebrate us. Like there are, for example, the White Rose, which is an anti-Nazi, you can say group, you can say a conspiracy, of course, because groups are conspiracies that today are, very, people would wish they would have been it in the French Resistance or something. But there is a great camaraderie of people who know the truth. They're the good people. They're going to be the ones that will be able to save the world. And it's very motivating. It's very fun. And of course, the Nazis too thought that they were, that they were that, the Nazi movement was about, knowing the truth, that the media, the lying press, the Lügen press would hide, and we are the ones that are revealing the truth. We're the ones that would, save the race or whatever. That it's a feeling that destiny is calling, right? It can be very strong feeling and motivator.
Oh, and it can. Oh no, jump in.
Yeah, and it can create infatuation. And when you get into an infatuated mindset where you're engulfed by the conspiracy theory, where it isolates you because of it's self-sealing, but also just psychologically you're so into it, that mindset comes with blind spots or misinterpretations of reality. And you see that also with other infatuations, romantic infatuation or parental infatuation, where you do not see flaws in the person you're infatuated with, or you don't see the flaws in your children that you're infatuated with. People can psychologically treat a conspiracy theory and become infatuated with it. And with that, they will actually have blind spots, or it can turn into willful ignorance, where willful ignorance is people who semi-consciously decide not to know something, but they're not fully conscious of it. So, for example, in The Sopranos, the TV show The Sopranos, you have a married couple where the husband is a murderer and an adulterer, and the wife, and part of organized crime, and the wife chooses not to know what he does at work.
Right.
But it's not fully conscious. She knows somewhere that there's probably something bad that he's doing, but she's willfully ignorant of it. And that is a way to keep her identity as a good mother, as a good family, a good wife,
member
intact.
of the community.
Yeah. So you can have various reasons for willful ignorance, where people, they might know that their government is doing something bad in Guantanamo, or, supporting Israel's whatever, or, it's
selling weapons to shady groups.
But they choose not to know. They choose not to look into that. They say, I'll first want to look into the what our enemies are doing, rather than the bad things that we are doing, or whatever way to justify their willful ignorance that I think can play a big role. And it's the term willful means that it's consciously decided on, but it's not really that conscious. So
here's another thing I wanted to touch on with you, Yuval, is the reason that we see so many authoritarian groups relying on conspiracy theory. This is, be it a government that creates a myth or a conspiracy theory about another, country.
So, for example, the Nazis claiming that there's a cabal of Jews, right?
Yes, that control everything.
Yeah.
Or why, Scientology believes that the IRS and the American Psychiatric Society or whatever organization are working in tandem together. Mm-hmm. That there is a global plot to control us through psychiatry and the IRS.
Yeah.
There's a ton. Or that, you're in this gang, so you should hate all people from that other gang because they did such and such a thing 30 years ago, which maybe isn't exactly true, or that there's a little bit of nuance or context that is missing from that. So why do you think that groups like this employ the use of conspiracy theory? Is that just sort of endemic? I mean, because that is very much the sort of the weaponization of conspiracy theory when you use it in that way.
I think that there's other ways that the conspiracy theories are also weaponized. So the Nazis saying that there is a conspiracy of Jewish bankers is one way, but another way is to actually have a conspiracy. For example, burning the Reichstag, which is the Nazis did in 34, I think, and blaming it on the communists. Right. So saying that, this is a conspiracy which is used to mask another conspiracy. So the Nazis actually burned the Reichstag, but they, which was a conspiracy.
Right.
But they put out a conspiracy that the communists did it, and they used that to justify, arresting and killing communists. But I think that sometimes also there's conspiracy theories that are sort of supported, but it is to channel the energies of parts of the population to ignore problems within the group. So it's sort of a distraction. So if there are people who will who will believe that there is a cabal against them, let's give them something to believe in so that they wouldn't think that we're the cabal. So right. This is consciously pushing of something that is a conspiracy theory. It's unclear whether the Nazis really believed that there is a Jewish cabal or not. Because it seems like top Nazis didn't believe it, and they knew that they were pushing a lie. But it could be that they really did believe it, and as such, they thought they were pushing the truth. And I think that those two types of pushing conspiracy theories, either believing in them or believing that they are a lie, but so that we're in this case, the conspiracy theory itself is a conspiracy. Right? So if, for example, QAnon is a leftist or the CIA or or someone, that would be a conspiracy to push another conspiracy theory. It could also be that, let's say, it is someone from the Trump campaign who is QAnon, and they use the conspiracy theory to say that anybody who criticizes the Trump campaign or the Trump, whatever family, the Republican Party, is automatically QAnon. Well, QAnon actually is for Trump, but it could be that if let's say it's a Democratic Party is pushed by QAnon, and QAnon really, it's not clear what the motivation behind it is. It really is. It does look like it could be any of this.
Sure. Oh, I mean, it could be. It could be, it could be me and you. You know what I mean? I mean, it really could be absolutely anything. It could be someone, in some intelligence agency here or abroad, just seeing, can we do this? Is this possible? Can we get away with this?
And it could be that they started 50 of these so far and none of them caught on until this one caught on. Right? Because
I mean, that's another thing too. I mean, there were other, groups or people on a lot of these message boards well before the QAnon theory took
I'm
off,
sure this kind of stuff has been going on all the time. Yeah.
Again, I mean, and I think we should just, point out as well that, our own government here in the U.S. and in many other countries has long, weaponized conspiracy theory. There is the famous, CIA memo talking about JFK and to, in a pejorative sense, use the term conspiracy theorist against anyone that didn't believe the official, the Warren Commission report. That was part of their whole thing. I mean, there's a whole, there's a lot of the CIA went out of their way to discredit a lot of early ufology researchers, to label them all as nut jobs. That was an active program. There's a film people might have heard of called Mirage Men, which is a documentary about Richard Doty, who was an Air Force security officer whose job it was to go around the country and basically feed supposedly insider information about UFOs and UFO landings to ufology researchers and conspiracy theorists, and he actually drove one person crazy, and he ended up taking his own life. And that was his job. He was paid to do that, to go to conventions and pose as someone else and feed information to people. So you can make of that what you will.
It could also we can also talk about this in the context of there's a thing called a liminal rebellion category, which is when, for example, a school would really, really demonize graffiti, so that kids that decide that they're going to be breaking rule breakers, that they'll draw graffiti and that they will not burn the school. So it sort of gives something which is a way to break the rules without actually doing damage. So maybe it's to the certain conspiracy theories that are pushed are used as that, so that if they'll believe in this ridiculous benign conspiracy theory, they will not see the real conspiracy that is going on, or which is the dangerous one. Right. So they push benign ones that, that are, that nobody will take too seriously, as a way to take attention away from, real conspiracies. But, many of the last wars of this country, the second Iraq War, the first Iraq War, the Vietnam War, there was a lot of conspiracies behind, those that have been completely, they're well known. And for example, the anthrax, after 9/11, there was the anthrax stuff that our friend shows that there's a lot of fishy, stuff about that. And today that is completely ignored, right? So that can also be seen as a conspiracy, right? The conspiracy can be a positive or a negative, right? The lack of attention can be a conspiracy. The paying attention can be a conspiracy, by the media, so yeah, it's hard to know where we are with all of those, but I think that this uncertainty and this lack of feeling of certainty and trust in the media is something that really makes conspiracy theories a lot more prevalent, both the silly ones and the serious ones.
Sure. Oh, and just to add on to what Yuval was saying just there, I mean, with the first and second Iraq War, I mean, what we had there was a bunch of mostly politicians, but also defense contractors and others conspiring together to create a conspiracy theory to get us into a war. So, the George Bush and others hired Hill and Knowlton, who did some work for Scientology, to create the babies in incubator story. And they hired the Kuwaiti ambassador's daughter to go and give a fake accounting of this horrific act, which never happened. And that convinced everyone to go and fight the first Gulf War. And
again, I remember being influenced by it myself as in high school.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, it was years before I learned that wasn't even really necessarily true. And that's not something that they're super forthright when you're in high school history books.
And nobody paid any price for it, I don't think that a lot of people even, don't think that was a bad thing that the government has done, or,
Well, that's still the case today. That I mean, again, there are people that don't fully believe that lying about Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction was a bad thing. That ultimately the conspiracy theory was justified. It's okay. Yeah. It doesn't matter that it's not true. And this is sort of goes back to what we were saying early on in the episode, that even when it doesn't really matter who this person is, or if this is like if the information is coming from a nefarious source, because ultimately it doesn't matter. Because what they're really saying is good. It doesn't matter that Saddam didn't have WMDs, because we know he was probably going to make them at some point. Or there's still people that truly believe no, they're somewhere, we just haven't found them yet.
So I'm from Israel, and in Israel there is a lot of people who believe that they will vote for a politician because he is good at lying. They don't want a bad liar. They want, or someone who would not lie. They want someone who be really good at manipulating the, to get what they think is ultimately a good outcome. But once you have a society where lying is legitimized, and that secret societies, sort of like a Cecil Rhodes image of a secret society that controls the government, where the secret police is in charge of the army, which is the structure of certain fascist and Soviet communist regimes. That puts conspiracy into the heart of government, which is fundamentally anti-democratic, because democracy is all about people making informed decisions regarding who they vote for. So, in a way, this idolizing of secret police or the military intelligence as something that we should use as and we should think of as a good thing, which a lot of people believe, right? The CIA and the FBI, they all have very strong support in the media, in politicians. They all today, of course, when Trump fights the intelligence department, everybody says how great the intelligence departments are, even though, of course, they have a lot of very problematic past. But when that is legitimized, when people think that it's good that we have someone who lies on our behalf, that is a very, very problematic situation, and it's something that really spurs a lot of different conspiracy theories, because people don't trust anything, and people can use that strangeness of the things they don't trust to see as a proof of, John Kennedy Jr. faking his death, or, right, Tom Hanks is supposed to be a pedophile, and,
or the CIA is good. That everything the CIA does, you know, even when they're trafficking drugs and weapons and killing people and torturing, that it's all totally okay.
Well, they're apparently really good at hiding the good things they do. So the bad things they do, we know about, but the good things, they manage to keep those secret.
Yes, yeah, exactly. which is like, I mean, straight out of their own mouths. That's like enshrined within the CIA's, code of ethics and their ethos and whatnot. And it, just, I think we'll start to wrap it up, but there's also something fascinating, about we were just talking about the war in Iraq. Let's take the one in the 90s. You had all of the media falling in line completely with what the various Western governments and Gulf Arab states were saying in terms of what was happening, and the same in 2003. You had people in the media back then also you didn't have Fox News. So today with a thing like Fox News, where a lot of people who would watch it it's very blatantly obvious that they are lying and they're using propaganda and they're not a legitimate. They look like real news, but they're not real news. Before that, there was a lot that, in 91, there was still a lot of people who thought the news is, on our side and will always tell us the truth. So it was even more potent back then. Well, yes, absolutely. But even so, even after in 2003, I mean, after the tragedies of 9/11, I mean, nobody was really willing to question what was happening. And it's so funny that, it's now, I mean, it's widely accepted that it was all a bunch of lies. Now, I think it says something about society, as a whole that we really haven't held anyone accountable for these lies. We've just sort of said, well, whatever. Millions of people killed, more displaced, countries, completely destroyed, infrastructure is gone, whatever. We know it was a lie, but, what are you going to do? You can't hold these people really accountable. But
in Sheldon Woolen's book about inverted totalitarianism, which is very good, he talks about that the big crisis. We had the Bush versus Gore, sort of the stealing of the 2000 election by the Supreme Court, and the big event was that the big crisis was that there was no crisis.
Right.
that people just, all right, I guess we'll have.
That's it. Yeah. Yes, we know the election was rigged. We know it was stolen. But whatever. Let's just,
And so he says the crisis was that there was no crisis.
Well, I find it interesting, today that, it's almost like nothing has changed. And if anything, I think people have become even more willing to believe the conspiracy theories that many in the media will put out there. And it's only sort of hardened people's resolve. And I say this as a warning that, I know we've been talking very negatively or, talking about the dangers. So maybe not negatively, but we've been talking about many of the dangers of following conspiracy theories completely, blindly or, to not question them. But, I think a big part of what Open Minds tries to do is instill this belief that we should be questioning, authority. We should be questioning many, if not all things that come towards us, especially when someone is trying to convince you or sway you to, believe a certain thing, to buy a certain product, to vote a certain way.
Are we back?
Say again, Yuval?
Yeah, I think I hear you now.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I might have lost you there. But I was saying, we've become so, just, I think, susceptible to this sort of stuff. We believe whatever, is being put in front of us many times. And that I think is dangerous because there are a lot of, groups, doesn't have to just be the media, that do, present us with conspiracy theories that are not true. And we should be questioning, a lot more of this. And I think that, unfortunately, that doesn't necessarily seem to be the case. And it's just interesting that we went, from, say, in the 90s, with the first Gulf War to now, and virtually nothing has really changed. The only change might be that people have become more sort of like biased towards others. It's, they vote this way, so I don't like them, or they, shop at such and such a place, or they're part of this, economic group. So I'm not going to believe anything, but, it's still kind of the same. And I guess just to throw out that, you should question a lot of, official conspiracy theories, especially when it comes to things like war or, you shouldn't like such and such a group or, a religious organization because look at this, that, and the other thing that they did. Many times these are conspiracies, these are exaggerations.
But the problem is, so one problem is people who believe everything, and the other problem is people who don't believe anything at all, right? So that there are people who say that everything is always a lie, right? So even when they report the weather, that's the conspiracy. So both dispositions are problematic, right? Automatically believing everything in the media and automatically doubting everything in the media. I think that the people who automatically doubt everything are more likely to believe in weirder conspiracy theories than the people who believe in anything, but they're both very problematic.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's where we should land with that, and maybe we'll wrap it up, because I think that is, again, that's always the problem is when these sort of like polar opposites, and we see that all the time. Again, it's this is something that we've talked about many times on the show. It's like the people that are hardcore, I don't know, Scientologists or something. It's not any better to be so anti-Scientology that you think, we should lock up everyone that's a Scientologist, or to regard everyone that believes in those, they're a lost cause. We spoke about that, recently on the show, this idea of, are people lost causes? Is it and that's a very negative opinion to have. And I think that is similar with the conspiracy world. While there are many pitfalls, we should be open to questioning lots of stories and lots of conspiracy theories that are spun to us from people in power, because many times they don't really have your best interests at heart. But I think we will leave it there for this month. I want to thank Yuval Laor for joining me on this episode of Open Minds on Air, and I want to thank all of you for listening to this episode. And if you enjoyed this and you would like to hear some more of the work that we do at the Open Minds Foundation, both the podcast and, of course, lots more, then go to openmindsfoundation.org, and you can find a ton of information there. There's been some great interviews also that have been posted with John Atack and other people involved with the foundation, so please check that out as well. If you want to support us, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can please do like our videos on YouTube, and most importantly, please tell your friends about the show.
Open mind.